Well, good afternoon, listeners. You're listening to Lament of Hope podcast, and I'm your host, Danielle Richardson. And today I'm with Jaha Dukureh. She actually, I'm fascinated to get to talk with her, and I'm so glad we could connect because Jaha actually wrote a memoir about her experiences. It's called I Will Scream to the World My Story, My Fight, My Hope for Girls. It came out almost a year ago. So I encourage you to get it if, after listening to this podcast, you want to know more, because obviously we can't hit all the details in such a short time. But she's the founder and CEO of Safe Hands for Girls, and she provides support to African women and girls who've experienced genital mutilation or forced marriage at a young age. And these are both things that Jaha actually experienced personally, and it's become something that has become her passion now to fight against as well as raise advocacy for. And so I'm just really blessed to get to have her. So, Jaha, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. And the book is actually coming out next month. It's not out yet.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I'm glad you said that because for some reason, when I looked at the publication date, it was like December 2024. So it's actually next month.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So this
Yeah,
is even better. We can promote your book. Look at that.
exactly.
Um, so so it's December 24th of 2025.
2024. We're still in 2024, I think.
Oh, you're right. Look at me.
Good way to start this.
You're right. And I said it, didn't I? I said December 24th. I said it came out last year. And I said 2024, didn't I? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So, listening audience, you can see that I messed that up. So, it's coming out a month from now because we are still in 2024 and we have not yet reached December. There we
Yes.
go. All right. So, Jaha, kind of to start out, I wanted to know was how would you describe your childhood? Was it like a happy one? Was it because you were not born in America, right?
No, I was born in the Gambia, and
Yeah.
I would say my childhood was very complex, just like my life has been entirely. And there were definitely happy moments, but there were a lot of sad moments as well that was filled with abuse. You know, personally, I feel like the first time I was violated, I was still a kid, even way before my marriage. And then I've also seen my mother get violently beaten. And but I still have great memories of growing up in a big family house where, I was surrounded by siblings, I was surrounded by aunts, I was surrounded by my community, and a lot of my hobbies as a kid was being outdoors, climbing on trees and hunting. And so I had, a very complex childhood. It wasn't perfect, but
Yeah.
you know, yes, they were good moments as well that I still cherish.
Is it typical in Gambia for children to experience sexual abuse before they are married?
Absolutely. I don't
Yeah.
know a girl in the Gambia that I have spoken to that wasn't touched in one way or the other
Okay.
way before they started dating or married. It's either a neighbor, you hear all kind of stories, and sometimes it's even within the families. It's a silent taboo that people don't usually talk about, because in the Gambia we have this culture of when a woman says that something bad has happened to them, a lot of times it's either you're doing it for attention or you're doing it for all of these reasons. And I think, and then
Hmm.
children are often scared, what would my parents do if I come out and tell them that, my uncle did this to me or a family member did this to me? I think in the Gambia, the first question we expect as women is, what did you do to deserve it? So even as a kid,
Oh.
instead of looking at the person that violated you as the bad person, it's always, what did you do for that person to do that to you. And for me, thinking back at my childhood, I was a kid. I had no idea what was being done to me.
Now, was it something that was being done to you by your parents? Or
No, 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 not my
no?
parents. It
Okay.
was a no, no.
Did
It was
and
an
did
uncle.
you ever tell them? Or because of that stigma, you didn't say anything?
No, I didn't. My mother died when I was very young, and I never had. I think if my mother was alive, I would have had that conversation with her. I
Okay.
don't think my dad would understand, so I've never had that conversation with him.
So when it first happened to you, how old were you?
I was very young. I was less than 10 years old.
Do you remember how you felt? Like, did you know what had happened, or were you confused, or how did you process it?
I don't think I understood what was happening at the time because this happened to the first time it happened. I remember it was my half sister and I together when this happened.
Hmm.
And only after I grew up during the Facebook era when that particular uncle sent me a message and on Facebook. And as soon as I saw it, it triggered me and I blocked him. And to this day, he's one of the accounts that I've blocked everywhere. And yeah.
So after that happened, you said though it happened multiple times, was it from the same uncle or?
Yes, and other people also tried, but he continued as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When when you say that other people tried, did it come to the point where you were able to fight back or run away or
When I was much older was the time that I was able to fight back.
so late teens or
Yes, even in my late teens. I mean, I think this has I mean, and I think one of the things is I don't really understand why and to this day I still question certain things that happened to me back then and why I allowed it or why I didn't defend myself, why I couldn't stand up for myself.
hmm.
And I don't have the answers, to be quite honest with you. I really don't have the answers. I wish it never happened. I wish I didn't have to experience that. And it has shaped my life in ways that, you know, it has shaped everything about me from, when I think look at my activism and why do I care so much about women and young girls specifically and why I'm doing it's because I wish someone stood up for me. Like the work that I'm doing right now, I wish,
Yeah.
my parents did that for me. I wish my community did that for me. I wish my family did that for me. And I think it's important for people like us who have the lived experiences to also use that to fuel us and try to bring about change because I think talking about these things are important. And one of the things that I've always been paranoid about, I have one daughter, Khadija, and we are in the Gambia, and knowing that what I experienced as a child and not even most of it is in the book. And I think the reason why I sometimes hesitate is because I don't want people to feel sorry or feel pity because I don't want them to say, how can so many bad things happen to one person? So because of that, it's like sometimes you almost feel like you can't share everything, but this book was the most honest and healing thing I've ever done for myself because for
Yeah.
the first time I spoke about things that I've never talked to anyone about. And that's something that I'm really, really proud of. And regardless of, what the outcome is, it's something that I'm really, really proud of.
Was it the first time like your daughter even got to hear your story was for your book or
Yes. I mean, we haven't really talked about a lot of the because Khadijah's still young. She's 14.
okay.
And the when I received the advance release copies of the book, the first book that I signed and wrote a note in is for her, and I gave it to her. And I told her, whenever she's ready, she can read it, and I hope that she understands me more and she understands why I was so protective and why I sheltered them the way I sheltered them. Sometimes I feel like my kids are, very sheltered, but at the same time, I know the history of where I come from.
Yeah.
And because of that, I'm not trusting of people with my children.
When you say sheltered, what do you mean by that? Like, how does that look?
Like, for instance, Khadija going over and spending the night with her cousins, it's not something that I'm usually okay with. And like as I think as a parent, I'm constantly paranoid about what could happen to her because the things that happened to me is not outside of my family, it was within my own family. So
Right.
and I don't ever want her to ever experience any of that. So because of that, I think I'm constantly wary of where she goes, who she's hanging out with, and not to be a control freak, but I just wanted her to get old enough to where she can speak of and not be scared. And one of the things that I'm really, really happy about, especially the relationship that I have with my children, is the fact that there's open communication. Whatever happens to them, they can come to me and talk to me and I didn't have that when I was growing up. I didn't have that kind of relationship with neither one of my parents. But I know that whatever my kids are going through, they would always come to me and talk to me about it and know that I wouldn't blame them for it.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting to me that you remaining in Gambia for the organization's sake and for your advocacy work? Because I would find, is that triggering for you? That must be hard to constantly be in an environment where you remember a lot of things from when you were a child.
So because I live between the Gambia and the US, and my friends in the
Okay.
US would always ask me why I keep coming back to the Gambia when this place only has ever brought me pain. And even as an adult, I feel like most of the time that I've spent when I come back to the Gambia, I come here obviously for the work that I do, and I also come here because I still have my dad here. And I still have my siblings here and I still have majority of my family here. And this place would always be home for me as well. But at the same time, the cultures and to this day, I still feel like I'm misunderstood by majority of people in the Gambia, including my own family. And that is often painful because even as a kid, I felt like I was never understood. And as an adult, because of the work that I do, I'm still judged for that. And I like there's a lot of things that trigger me when I hear stories from young women who reach out to me and share some of the things that they're going through, or even if I'm reading something online and knowing that these things are still happening and seeing how sometimes men are commenting below and saying that you guys are just making this up for attention.
Hmm.
It does bother me and it does affect me, yes.
When you, so for you, like in Gambian culture, genital mutilation, forced marriage, that's just how life is. So it seems like you're going against the
Yes,
code kind of thing.
yes, to many
Now,
people that's exactly what it is, yes.
do you see that with women too, or is it mostly the men in the culture that say that to you or feel that way, or do you find that the women see you as like a voice for them, or even the women are wary of the advocacy you're doing?
So majority of the backlash and hate that I get is from men, but there are women who still go with the patriarchy, women who say that they're fine with some of these practices and they have no issue with it. Some of them go as far as claiming that it's part of their religion. So in the Gambia, 76% of women have been subjected to female genital mutilation. And child marriage is also very rampant in many of our tribes in the Gambia. So historically, this has been the norm for people. And if you're coming out and telling them that there's something wrong with that, you're seen almost as the devil. And that's how I feel when I'm in the Gambia. And it's not the easiest thing to go through. It has affected my mental health. It has challenged me. And there's been many times when I feel like I need to give up and just, especially recently, we had a case in the Gambia where our parliament, basically, which is our National Assembly, tried to legalize female genital mutilation again, because about 10 years ago, we pushed for a law that made both FGM and child marriage illegal in the Gambia. and religious fanatics came out and tried to legalize it. And I was home and fought hard. We won, but it wasn't so much of a win because of the amount of hate I experienced
Hmm.
during that period. And, I read things about myself and I see, my face on TikTok videos and things like that. And many of the things that they say are not factual. And for someone like you and me, it would be beyond you to understand why anyone would want to take away the most sensitive part of a woman's body. But this is our reality.
Yeah. I was gonna ask, when you say
Yeah.
religious fanatics, what kind of religion is pushing this in Gambia?
Well, the practice of FGM predates all the Abrahamic religions, but in the Gambia, we have more than a 90% majority Muslim population,
Okay.
and they claim that this is part of their religion, even though there's Muslim countries around the world that do not necessarily practice FGM, and there's countries around the world that are not Muslim as well that practice FGM. So I personally do not believe that this has anything to do with religion. I just think that conservative religious leaders are using religion to violate the rights of women and girls, and that's all it is.
Hmm. When did you first experience FGM?
I was 1 week old.
You were 1 week old.
Mhm.
So what does it involve? And forgive my ignorance, what does that mean exactly?
So the World Health Organization defines female genital mutilation as the removal of the external female genitalia. And basically what that means, there's three types of FGM. Type 1 is the partial or total removal of the clitoris, while type 2 is the removal of the clitoris as well as the labia. And then with type 3, the clitoris is removed, the labia is removed, and the vagina is sealed usually with your own tissue, or sometimes it's sewn together with just a small hole that would allow you to urinate and menstruate. But even that, it brings a lot of complications. So these are the three types of female genital mutilation that are practiced.
And which happened to you?
Type 3.
So, is the purpose of the genital mutilation so that women do not enjoy sex? Is that the point?
That's partially it, but it's more about they believe there's different reasons why FGM is practiced. Some believe that it's for cleanliness. Some believe there's all these myths. None of it is true because the World Health Organization calls female genital mutilation a violation of human rights. So their justifications that, a woman will not cheat on her husband and then her sex drive wouldn't be more than her husband. So it's just to suppress women and their sexuality, basically.
But even I would think if they remove the clitoris, I mean, that removes all sexual, because isn't that mainly where a woman would receive sexual
But
pleasure?
that's why it's removed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
there's
why it's removed.
and there's no real reason given. You're saying there's just tons of different myths out there, but there's not really any purposeful reason given for why it's done.
No, there's no evidence or any good reason for why it's done. No, it has no benefit to the woman.
But you would say it's because of a suppression of women's sexuality.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I believe, yes, that's all it is.
Now, parents, if you are 1 week old, this is something parents do to their kids or allow to be done to their children, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it's still happening in the Gambia and elsewhere.
And they think it's just the right thing to do.
Yes, they do.
Now, for you, I mean, I can't imagine the pain. I mean, as especially as you grow, right? Everything's developing, everything's growing. Also, I'm like, how do you have children? I mean, it must be so painful. I mean, for you, like, now being older and growing up with that, I mean, is it how does that affect your health? Do you have infections? Is it hard to have children? I mean, how do you enjoy, are you able to enjoy a sexual experience at all? I mean, how has it affected your life?
Well, I think all women are different who have experienced FGM. In my case, for instance, I gave birth to three kids, but
Wow.
when I delivered yeah, I have three beautiful babies, and they're not babies anymore. But when I delivered my kids, I remember I had to be cut open every single time and then stitched back up. And but when it comes to do I experience infections? No. Do I enjoy sexual pleasure? Absolutely. The reason why, um, unlike many women who have experienced FGM, I actually went through somewhat of a reversal surgery, which has
Okay.
helped me regain a lot of, what I want to feel as a woman. So I,
Yeah.
in a way, took back power in my own hand.
Now, for women who, when you got that surgery, was that something that was available to you in the US or in Gambia?
Yes, in the US. I did the surgery in California.
Okay. So it's not something that your typical Gambian
No,
woman could get in Gambia.
no. I mean, globally, there are 200 million women who are living with the 230 million women who are living with the consequences of FGM, and not even 1% of them would have access to a surgery like this.
Are they able to have kids, or for some of them is that like not possible?
No, 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 no. I mean, women who have experienced FGM, because the clitoris is usually cut off, but then your other, and the labia that's on the outside, that's what they
Okay.
usually off. So what it does is there's usually scar tissue around there that makes it difficult for you to stretch and have your baby no, like the normal way, right? But it doesn't prohibit women from having kids, no.
Okay. So it just basically prevents, I mean, it's shame. I'm guessing it gives them shame and is a suppression in a way, right? And then
Yeah,
at the same time you have the lack of sexual experience, most likely, that, it's really man focused as opposed to a both way.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's about ensuring the women are virgins when they get married, and it's ensuring that they stay faithful to their spouses. Because if you don't have sexual desire, you're not going to,
Of course.
sex.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the only reason why this practice happens.
So how did you find out about it if you were 1 week old? Did your parents just explain it to you someday, or did you just discover it yourself? I mean, how did you know this happened to you?
No, I got married when I was 15 years old. And when I got married, because like I said earlier, I went through type 3 FGM, which means that my own tissue was used to seal me. So my marriage couldn't be consummated until that seal was removed. That's how I discovered that I went through FGM.
Okay, so the seal can be removed when.
Yes, when you get married, because or else you can't have sex.
Okay, but if the clitoris is gone, obviously that still affects your
Yeah,
experience. Right.
exactly.
Okay.
Still affects your experience. Yes.
How did you feel when you discovered that?
Angry, shocked, but you know, yeah.
And the forced marriage, was that something that you even had any desire for, or were you terrified? I mean, how did you feel
No,
getting married
absolutely.
at 15?
I was a kid. I couldn't consent to sex.
Yeah.
That's not something that I wanted.
How old was the man you married?
He was in his 30s.
And I mean, your wedding day, I mean, what were you thinking?
I didn't want to be there. I was scared. I had lost my mother less than a year ago. I wish she was there, and I wish someone would take me out of the situation that I was in. It wasn't a happy moment. Even back then, as young as I was, I knew that that's not what I wanted. And I cried a lot, cried out for help, but no one came. And yeah,
And it was arranged between like your dad and him, or
our families.
Okay.
Yeah, our families.
So how long did you remain married to this man?
I was there for 3 months and then I ran away.
So it was a really abusive relationship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where did you run away to?
I had an aunt and uncle in the Bronx that I lived with for a while, but there was also an organization in New York called Equality Now and Sanctuary for Families that really supported me during that time.
Okay. So did your husband come after you at all or no?
He tried, but I told him that I was a minor because at the time I understood both from Equality Now as well as Sanctuary for Families, I understood US laws. And because of that, I used that to threaten him and told him that if he forced me to go back, I will report him to the police.
So, I mean, that's hugely brave because you didn't have any precedent for that, I'm guessing. I mean, you didn't know anyone who'd done that before.
No,
Did you feel at all like you were going against your culture by saying that, or did you know it was the right thing that you were doing?
I felt like I was going against my family and I felt like I was putting a stain on their honor at the time.
Hmm.
But deep down, I also knew that this is not what I wanted.
You know, it's so interesting to me. You mentioned that you come back to Gambia in part because your father and your family's there. I mean, do you hold any anger towards your family for the fact that they didn't do anything to help you? I mean, how did you process that where you're actually able to visit them and have a relationship with them?
I think in moments when I don't have any anger or resentment towards my family. I'm very, very close with my dad. And but there are moments when, something will come up where, something would come up and then that would trigger me. And, obviously I will think about the times when I was alone in New York and all the things that I experienced, while I was out there on my own. And the fact that no one, I have 33 siblings. I have older brothers who were working at the time, and no one looked out for me or did anything to see how I was doing, or, I helped myself through school. No one has ever, like, everything I am today. And I think that's what sometimes pisses me off, especially when I feel like my family is entitled to what they believe is my success. And I do get angry because then I'm like, where were you guys when I had to be a waitress in Harlem and my boss, at the time as a 16, 17-year-old, I had a jerk of a boss that was constantly trying to sexually abuse me. All the nights that I slept in the trains in New York from Harlem to the Bronx and, going to school in the morning and getting off school and then going to work till sometimes 1 or 2 a.m. you know, I was a kid. I didn't need to do any of that. Like at this point, when I remember last summer, my son wanted to get a job. And I can't even imagine that, not that I don't want him to work, but I just want him to be a kid. I want him
Yeah,
to enjoy being a kid right now.
yeah.
And for me, it's like, how could you guys leave me out there like that? So there are times when I think about it, but not that I have any resentment towards them. No.
How, and I gotta ask you, how do you not have resentment toward them? Because they deserve it in a way, if you think about it. How do you not have resentment toward them or anger that would prevent you? Because I have talked to so many survivors of trauma, and I've experienced trauma myself, and it's very hard to say. I've met people who said they do not forgive their abusers. And then for other people, they're like, I have to forgive every day because it just comes back. And so resentment is very easy. And so I'm astounded hearing you say that you don't have any resentment. How do you do that?
My sister always tells me that she believes that I have selective memory, where I think my family thought that I just forget and I don't remember anything that I went through or any of the things that happened to me. But it's not that, it's just I chose to not talk about them. I chose to not put that out in the world and let that lead me
R-
because if I did that, I wouldn't have anyone left in my life.
right.
You know, if I did that, I wouldn't have anyone left in my life. And a part of me still wants that family identity. And I think that's something that I still struggle with today. It's like a part of me, and I remember as a 15-year-old when I was married off, and there was a woman called Taina May who's featured in the book. She wanted me to come to her house. She would have adopted me. She's like a mother to me, even to this day. We are very, very close. And the reason why I couldn't do that at the time was because I didn't want to cut ties with my family. And to this day, I still don't want to because I do, my father, I lost my mom when I was very, very young, and my dad, being the only parent I've always known and always seen, it's not something that comes easy for me. And when it comes to forgiveness, I realize that they're products of their culture. It doesn't make them evil people. It's just they think this is the right thing. For them, it's like this has been happening for generations. It has been passed down to us. They don't see anything wrong with it. Every single woman in my family before me was married off at 14 or 15. And none of them have gotten a divorce. When I talk to them, a lot of them think they're happy. They're okay with it, even though maybe their husbands have multiple wives or they're in situations that you and I would not necessarily agree with, but they believe this is their culture and they have no issue with it.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I look at it from a place of compassion sometimes. And even within my activism, I never go into a community thinking that I have all the answers. I go in and I
Right.
listen, regardless of how much I disagree with. I listen and I try to come up with solutions with respect as well as compassion.
Right. And for you,
Yeah.
um, what do you think now is the hardest part? Especially because writing this memoir, like you said, it's healing, but that's also very hard because you're having to write down everything, right? And it's like becoming concrete. It's no longer in your mind anymore. It's something that you've written down, and it's something that other people will read, and it's a permanent marker of what's happened to you. Um, what do you think for you is still a trauma that you are really trying to work through that is still, you feel like, has a grip on your life as an adult?
Are you there?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Did you hear me?
Yeah. No, I didn't hear you. The internet was on and off. Can you repeat that, please?
Oh, yeah, sure. I was just asking what trauma from your past do you feel like still has a grip on your adult life?
Not feeling like I was enough because I think a part of me always felt like I wasn't enough for my family. I wasn't enough for my parents. I wasn't enough for my community. And I think to this day, I'm still trying to I'm still trying to be enough and be loved. I throughout my life, right? I feel like as an adult, I've gotten myself in relationships where I haven't been valued. I've gotten myself in situations where people made me feel like I wasn't good enough. And I think the reason why I keep doing that is because that's the only thing I know represents love. And the reason why I keep coming back to my family, the reason why I keep coming back to the Gambia is because all my life that's been what love has been for me. And I don't know any other way of doing things different, even though I've been to therapy, I've, tried to heal myself through therapy and medication and all of that. But I haven't seen anything else that's different from what I was raised in and what I grew up in and what I know.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big problem. It's a huge problem that I'm working on every day, but I don't know that I have a long way to go.
Yeah. No, and I think even from my own personal experience, healing, I think it's dangerous to say you're completely healed ever. You know what I mean? I think it's something that you can grow and grow and grow and grow in to the point where you may not even recognize yourself 10 years from now, you know. But at the same time, that is part of your story. And so
Exactly.
there's a humility to realizing I'm weak in this area. You know, this is something that I have been hurt by so much that I can't not say, oh, it doesn't bother me anymore, you know. Um, I was gonna ask you though, because you had mentioned earlier about Muslims and the religious component to this. For you, like, has this whole experience turned you away from any sort of godlike relationship or any godlike figure or any kind of religion? Or for you, um, have you been able to separate religion from what happened? Or how do you see religion in light of what you've gone through?
So I'm a very spiritual person. I believe in a higher power. I know that there's a higher power out there that and I believe in energy, right? I'm a very energy driven type of person, but I just don't like the way men have used religion to justify certain acts or violences against humanity. And it's not just FGM, but it's like every time religion is used to justify any type of violence or inequality or mistreatment of people, I have a problem with that because I don't think that's why religion came into our lives. I personally believe that all religions came into our lives to provide us with a moral compass and some kind of moral guidance, but not necessarily to divide us. So, yes, if that answers your question.
Yeah. So when you say higher power, it's more of like you're talking about like an energy, like a source of energy that kind of maybe, and tell me if I'm wrong because I'm trying to understand as well, propels you and gives you guidance, but it's not, there's not a specific term, there's not a name. It's just like an energy, a force that you feel and know is guiding you in life kind of thing.
Absolutely. And I'm still also a practicing Muslim. I was born and
Okay.
raised in the religion. But yeah, so I do believe that there's a God, but I'm just not, there's certain things that I identify with when it comes to Islam, right? Because I do believe that Islam has, for instance, given us guidance on how to live our lives in a way that is peaceful, how to live with our neighbors, giving out charity. These are values that I really, really believe in.
Right.
But there's other things I have issues with, like I said, because for me, it's like a child cannot consent to sex.
Right.
And I don't think any religion condones forcing a child to get married. And even Islam doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying that most of the people in, well, not most, but the Muslims in Gambia that do forced marriages, which is a large majority, they do say though that it is okay under the Muslim faith to do that.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. I
Even
guess,
FGM, they say that it's their religious right. Yes.
but in the Quran itself, does it say that?
No, not that I know of. No.
Hmm. So it's so, it's interesting because you've had like you've had physical emotional, and then you have spiritual trauma. That's a lot of trauma.
It is. It is. And it is. Yeah.
Did you, mentioning your three children that you have now, did you remarry?
So I remarried. When I left my marriage, the first one, when I was 15 and ran away, I went to high school and then graduated at 17. And then my marriage was arranged again, this time around with my cousin, who's the father of my three children.
Are you still with your second
No,
husband? No?
no, no.
Now, was that also because it was abusive, or you?
No, he was a good father to my kids. It's just we were not compatible. We were
Yeah.
never compatible. We don't believe in the same things. We don't see eye to eye. And yeah,
But that was a forced marriage as well, so that's not something you wanted either.
no.
Hmm. Did this, I'm just thinking because I'm married myself, and in America, forced marriage is like unheard of, right? It's just you're like, wow, I've never experienced that. Happened somewhere, but I have no personal connection to that. Does it do you ever want to marry someone that you choose, or has this kind of just turned you away from wanting to do that? You're like, I'm good. Don't want to go there anymore.
So again, earlier on you talked about what traumas do I have that I've carried into my adulthood. I fell in love for the first time when I was in my I was gonna say late 20s, but I would say it was actually my early 30s. And I believed at the time that he was the love of my life, and we got married, but it didn't last. And I wrote about it extensively in the book. I think it's a chapter called Love Found and Love Lost. And but I still haven't given up on love, even though that ended in heartbreak. But I do want to experience it in its purest form. And I do hope that someday I will meet someone who would give me or share, that kind of love that I know that I want to give and receive at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's what it is to be human, right? Wanting to
exactly.
experience that and to be able to do that for other people, to be known.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, I was gonna ask you, because I want to be respectful of your time, but can you just, for my listeners who, hearing your story for the first time, can you tell us a little bit about your organization, Safe Hands for Girls, and what that kind of looks like on a day-to-day for you?
Absolutely. So Safe Hands for Girls is a survival-led nonprofit organization. We started out in 2013 in my living room by having women who had experienced FGM and child marriage come share their story. It was a safe space. And then that grew to us doing a lot of advocacy in the US. We worked with the Obama administration to pass a law called the Girls Protection Act, which made it illegal to transport girls out of the US for the purpose of FGM. And then I came back to the Gambia and we do a lot of work on laws here. We have school clubs across the country. We have mentorship programs. The reason why we have those mentorship programs is because I personally believe that you can't be what you haven't seen. And it's important for girls in my community to see people like me so they too can believe that they can do all of that. So our mentorship and training programs are all about empowerment. And now we have a big agricultural program because we believe that we can't end violence against women and girls until we uplift women out of poverty. And the biggest driver of change is going to be agency. Women need to have their own agency to make decisions, not only for themselves, but for their daughters as well. So our day-to-day activities at Safe Hands for Girls include trainings, workshops, but also our agricultural program. So I spend a lot of time in the farms.
So you work alongside these ladies and talk with them.
Yes.
That's so cool. I mean, not, and I don't say that in a way to say, oh, what you've gone through is amazing. Let's just keep on doing that. But it's so awesome that you get to touch people's lives like that every day.
Exactly. And it makes me happy. I feel like the work that I do makes me very, very happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I, when you mentioned that act by the Obama administration, that is for Gambian girls not to be taken from the US back to Gambia,
It's not
right?
just
Or just,
it's not just Gambian, it's just every country that practices FGM. Like I said earlier,
okay.
230 million girls around the world have been subjected to female genital mutilation. And that's most of Africa, Asia, Middle East. It's even in places like Colombia, even Maldives, they practice FGM. So it's yeah.
Is it practiced in Ghana too?
It used to be practiced in Ghana, but the numbers have gone down significantly in Ghana.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just one last question for you. You know, if what do you want to say to, Americans who are listening to your story and hearing about FGM for the first time, hearing more in depth about forced child marriage? Um, what is something that you would like to say to American women and young people who are listening to you right now?
I mean, I would like for them to know that it's important for them to read books like this because it goes into detail. Because a lot of times when someone hears female genital mutilation, they are like, oh my God, I can't believe something like this is happening. But I think it's important for them to read because, it might be your colleague, it might be someone that you went to school with. And people who have experienced these practices sometimes look just like me and they sound like me. And it could be your friend that you grew up with. And we all have a responsibility to ensure that these are not practices that we carry forward into the next generation. And that, I always say that the world that we were handed was not the world that I want to hand to my children. And
Yeah.
I think the only way we can do that is through educating ourselves, helping to raise awareness, and getting involved.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Action over just words. True.
exactly. Exactly.
Well, Jaha, I want to thank you. I mean, I'm blessed to connect with you and hear your story. I'm glad this worked out. And also, for listeners, I'm going to emphasize again, I messed up at the beginning. It's coming out next month, not next year. And we're in 2024, not
Yes.
2025. So please look on Amazon. I will have a link to um, Jaha's website, and all the information is there on her organization as well as to get the book when it comes out. And please do look into her work and get the book, read it. And hopefully this is something that will give you some food for thought and things to think about, and also people to learn more about and to grow in empathy towards. And hopefully, who knows, Jaha, maybe you're going to get somebody who's going to come work for you.
Who knows? We would appreciate that and we would love that. And Danielle, thank you so much for doing this interview. I'm truly, truly grateful. And yes, please pre-order the book and it's an amazing read.
I'm sure though it's also tons of tears. It sounds so.
I cried so much when I was writing this book, and I feel like my tears have almost dried because of yeah.
Well, your tears are in the book, and that's going to be felt. So,
Yeah.
thank you again, Jaha. So good meeting you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.